Hi guys, welcome to the podcast. Before we start, we just want to introduce you to our sponsor. Our sponsor is the Twitter handle @MugsNFL. They're a company that offer a range of custom items such as mugs, t-shirts, crewneck jumpers, and hoodies, all customized with your favorite sports player or your sports team. That can be any sport ranging from the NFL through to the NBA to UK sports. All you have to do for an extra 10% off your order is drop them a message on Twitter quoting our podcast, that is the Hardwood Hoops podcast, and they'll get 10% off your next order. Cheers and enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome back to the Hardwood Hoops podcast. This is episode 34, and I'm joined by my usual co-host this time, Mr. Ben Jones. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, good, thank you. Seems a long time since we last spoke.
Yeah, I know it's been a while, and we're very, very excited for the next week of crazy news, I think.
Oh, there's so much potential. Some of the stuff we've read about and heard, the dominoes will fall.
Yeah, there's a lot of rumours that this whole week is going to be nuts, which we'll just dive straight into in terms of news. We'll start with why this week's going to be nuts. So from Monday, 2 days before the draft, so that is the 16th, teams can officially make trades rather than just discuss them. Wednesday, we obviously have the 18th, we have the NBA draft, and then free agency starts 2 days later. Well, and then that night, so 6 hours after that, players can officially sign after the discussion period. So in this week, trades, draft, free agency, all going to start in one go. The first time that free agency has started after the draft like this in this scenario. What are your thoughts on that schedule? We said it needed to be moved up, and it all has been moved up. And how excited for you, and maybe worried about how busy we're going to be on the podcast?
Yeah, it's entertaining, isn't it? Not ideal for, especially like people in the media. Well, I don't think they should be complaining. It makes their job a bit easier. They got stuff to talk about, and they pay to talk about it. Whereas I guess for us, trying to do this around our actual day jobs does become slightly trickier. But I'm sure we'll make it work. I'm just excited to see what potential changes we could see and what a difference that's going to make to the NBA landscape going into this season. Really excited.
Yeah, and in terms of the COVID plan, they've announced some teams won't be having fans at all for the foreseeable because of the counties they're in. They've also announced that some teams can fill the suites that obviously cost the most money. I believe a suite at the Warriors Arena is 2.5 million for a season. They're allowed to be half filled now, so those teams can get those extra millions. They've set an agreement for the funding for players' contracts. They're still in discussions about extra roster spots and maybe being able to call people up from the G League at shorter notice. So everything's moving in the right direction. We look a lot closer, and teams are definitely focusing on the trade and draft now because the amount of rumours we're going to go through in a minute is crazy.
Yeah, it's great. Again, NBA and NBPA just working seamlessly together to get everything rolling, to get the most out of it for the fans and for the players and for the organisations. So hats off to them, and doing it in the time frame that they're doing it is so incredible. It's really nice for the Warriors to open up their boxes worth 2.5 million, isn't it? You know, really good.
Nice. Yeah, Clippers doing the same, but I don't think they're quite the same price. They're definitely in the millions. So the Knicks I haven't heard about, but I bet the Knicks are even more than 2.5 million.
Did you say the Clippers are doing the same?
Yeah, I believe the Clippers are planning on doing the same, but they've got to wait till they get agreed to have fans have it in the stadium because the Lakers have announced they're not having any fans. So I think
I was going to say.
Try and do some agreement. Yeah, well, they're trying to open the suites up, so I don't know if they're almost trying to class the suites and general fans different because there's glass and stuff. So I don't know if it's classed the same, but I read that the Clippers, Knicks, Pistons, Bucks, and there was two more teams. They all want to speak to their mayors and get their suites opened to try and get some money in, but that's probably the least of our worries. We're not going to be paying 2.5 mil for a suite, unfortunately, anytime soon.
No, it's quite funny as well because those suites aren't exactly close to the court. You're essentially going to be paying a lot of money to sit in a glass box and watch it on a telly anyway. So But if I had millions sitting around, I'd probably go for it.
Probably get one for a couple of £100 at the Cavs. So.
Yeah, easy. I might just buy them all up.
Cool. So let's go on to go through our main segment. Really, later on we've got a draft interview with James Plowright, who you've heard in the last podcast. But the plan is we're going to go through the NBA rumor mill and talk about some trades that involve some draft picks, and see. I'm going to see Ben's opinion on some of them, and we're going to talk about different options. So let's kick off with the biggest one, Mr. Russell Westbrook. He's requested a trade from Houston. James Harden wants to stay, but Russell Westbrook wants to leave. We kind of heard that he wants to go to Lakers, Clippers, or the Bucks, Ben. But this morning we've heard news that the Hornets are now the league contenders. We're not sure what the trade would be. James, who we'll speak to later, is a Hornets fan. The only reason he wants him to trade for Westbrook is if the Rockets are going to send them picks. They do not want to lose any picks for Russell Westbrook, which I understand. What are your thoughts on him leaving Houston and the Hornets fit, or do you think he fits better at Knicks? What are your thoughts on this one?
I mean, it fits well in terms of the Hornets. It gives him a team to run and be the boss of, and he can use as much ball time as he wants. He can go back to getting his triple doubles and picking off easy assists and easy rebounds, stealing it off all the centers, and he can be Mr. Triple Double again. But he will not win a thing at the Hornets. The Hornets should try and get picks back from Houston. Absolutely. Will they for this? Probably not. I don't think so. It doesn't fit me timeline-wise for Westbrook. Obviously, he wants to go to Lakers, Clippers, or Bucks because they are the three big championship contenders that could potentially trade for him.
Or the Knicks.
Again, very.
They can afford him though. I think that's why, because obviously he knows that he can't go to a team that can't afford that huge contract, which he's due to get paid $42 million this year, just so everybody knows.
Wow, obscene. Who signed into that?
It's a lot of money. Sam Presti, I believe.
I don't know. It's also what is Houston doing? Are they going into a rebuild? Do they want something back that's playable to pair with Harden to push on further? Are they going to slide Harden now back to the point guard and fill around him?
We spoke about this offer about the rebuild idea. I don't think they are. It depends what they get back. If they give Westbrook and a couple of picks to Charlotte, but they do take a Rozier back just to add a point guard, arguably that's probably better because Rozier is not going to just jack up shots as much as Westbrook. And in terms of salary cap, they're minus 24 million for this year. But like I said, Russell Westbrook makes 42. So if you take 42 off that, a bit of quick maths, that's 18 million plus the mid-level. So they've got 18. If they don't take any players back, they've got 18 million. They could spend 15 to 18, depending on tax, to spend on other players, and they'll have a 9 million mid-level. So you could argue they could sign maybe 2 players if they don't take anyone back, or they could take a Rozier back and then still sign 1. So I don't know. I just think maybe Westbrook instigated this, and the Rockets didn't want an unhappy player. And we spoke about this before, that the owner's hemorrhaging money and he doesn't want to spend big money. And if you can take 42 million off your salary cap for a player that doesn't want to play for you anyway, and you still get to keep James Harden, who does most of the work, I don't think it's a bad trade at all for the Rockets. But me and you are the same. We're not big Westbrook fans. So
the problem is Westbrook in reality was their center. He was the guy that was going to be athletically getting the rebounds, dishing the ball back out, or going for the putbacks, those kind of things, clearing up the boards, because he is so athletic. And if they let him go and don't fill the gap now with a big or another player equally as athletic, they are going to have a huge hole in their defense and offense that teams are going to exploit so badly. They really need to think hard about how they're going to go about this next move when they trade him.
Yeah, so you don't think it's a good fit for the Hornets. Not a big loss for the Rockets, depending on what they do next. But Final question for this one is: out of all the teams you've heard, it sounds like the Hornets is most likely at the moment, but Hornets, Knicks, Clippers, and the Lakers. Which team do you just think, off the top of your head, would be the best fit for him, or do you think it's none of them? Or for the team, I should say. Which team would benefit the most from having him? Would it just be the Knicks, just to get people interested again because he's a star and
he's a headline player? So the teams that benefit the most, I think, would be the Knicks or the Hornets. Like if he goes,
they don't give up any young assets.
Yeah, if he goes to either of them, he gets headlines and gets people talking about these teams that that A are both a mess, and B, one is a smaller market and needs a bit of a boost in sort of social media stratosphere, get people talking about them again and get them more relevant. Even though they're owned by the most famous basketballer of all time, no one cares about them.
MJ is very close friends with Russ as well, which I think is another factor people need to consider. They get on so well that could be why MJ wants him. You know, if you've got that relationship already.
Yeah, I think Russ is a Jordan Brand player as well, isn't he? I think that's shoes wise. So like that could, I think you're right. That is probably going to be the move. But if Russ wants to win a championship, he needs to be going somewhere else. That's the bottom line. However, I think any of those championship contender teams he goes to, he makes them worse.
Yeah, the only one I think he improves is it depends if they give up, but the Bucks might improve because I'm that low on Bledsoe.
But
a lot of people, for example, Joe, who we spoke to in the last podcast, he likes Bledsoe. They disagree with me on that, especially with the amount of money it costs before you've got to pay Giannis. And without knowing what everyone gives up, it's hard to tell. But for me, I just think the best fit would probably be the Knicks because I think he would get a lot more from it financially long term than he would at Charlotte. And whatever he does, I don't think he's not going to win a title with either of those two teams. So I think financially it's better for the Knicks probably. But again, no one should be giving up a pick or a young player for Russ at this point, not with his injury history and the fact he can't shoot anymore at all. But let's move on from that one. Neither of us are buzzing about that one. I do think Houston could improve, though. We're Houston haters. I like the new head coach, and I think they could weirdly improve, depending on what they get back. We'll have to see what they get back. Let's move on to my team. This will be a bit more of a quick one because we haven't got a one player to talk about. So apparently the Mavs are eyeing a star. They're very well tipped for Giannis next year. They could still create cap space for Giannis next year, no matter what they do this year. But apparently they are looking into Zach LaVine, Victor Oladipo, and Spencer Dinwiddie as trade candidates. They've not got their pick for next year, so I think they would have to involve their pick for this year and maybe a couple of their younger players. Which of those three names fits the Luka and Porzingis timeline and the way they play? Zach LaVine, Victor Oladipo, or Dinwiddie?
So I wouldn't go Zach LaVine. I don't think. I think we talked about this a little bit off air with him. He demands a ball a lot, and he won't be the best player on that team. He is the best player in Chicago at the moment, so he can have the ball in his hands. Yeah. But if he moves that team, he will be the third option. I'm not sure how he would cope with that. And for the salary, you'd quite possibly have to end up paying him or whatever he's on at the moment.
He's got big money at the moment.
Yeah, not sure it works. Oladipo, again, would be a perfect third option. But what's his salary like? What do they want out of him as a player? Do they want just a scorer, in which case that is a good option? Or do they want somebody that can do a little bit of everything and probably be worth the money he's paid, which kind of steers me towards Spencer Dinwiddie. I think the Nets would be silly to give him up because he's a really good player and he's going to be a solid backup for when Kyrie spends 6 months injured. So I think it'd be stupid to give it up, but I think he could fit really, really well with the Mavs because although Luka will be doing a lot of the ball handling and distributing, when he's not on the floor, Spencer Dinwiddie would be happy to step in and take over and run that second unit and I think that's what kind of scuppered them a little bit this time, especially. They targeted Luka, and especially when Porzingis wasn't there, there's no other option really. And Spencer Dinwiddie could be that option, and for a reasonable price. So that would be my best option personally. But you, as a Mavs fan, where would you go?
I agree with you that Zach LaVine's the worst fit. He's on the most money as well for this season and for next season. It's difficult without knowing what they give up. I think my brain says that Pacers would want more for Oladipo.
Yeah.
But I think he is a better basketball fit for me because I think on the ball he's better than Dinwiddie historically. I know it's difficult because the last time we saw Oladipo he wasn't himself, but historically he's better with the ball to give when Luka has a break. But the difference is when they're playing together, I think he's a lot better shooter than Dinwiddie can be, spot up. I haven't checked the stats, so I could be wrong on that, but the eye test for me says he's a bit of a better spot up shooter, which is good. But Porzingis gets injured a lot, and so does Oladipo, whereas Dinwiddie is a very consistent player. So you do get the benefit. In terms of salary, the benefit of getting Oladipo is, yes, it's 21 million, so it's a lot of money, but it's only for 1 year. So if they want Giannis next year, it doesn't affect next year at all.
Sure.
Dinwiddie's a little bit less. He's only on 11.5 this year, so that's a really good salary. And then I believe he is a free agent. Yeah, so he's a free agent the year after. You should be paying him 11, then 12. So it probably wouldn't be enough to disrupt them getting Giannis. So it depends what they want. He's a little bit less money, so would they have to give up less? I'm not sure, but I'm not sure what the Nets would want back from the Mavs that makes sense. That the Nets kind of want to win now. It's another pick in this year's draft. I think the Mavs pick at 18 and the Nets pick at 16 or 17, something like that. They're basically next door to each other. I don't think the Nets are going to want 2 picks back to back in the middle of a draft for me. So what else are they going to ask for? That's the only worry. So I think Oladipo is more likely, but I'd be worried that having your second and third best player being Porzingis and Oladipo, it could be incredible. But if they're both injured, it could be another playoff run with Luka and do on his own. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. We'll have to see what they give up, and they've already given 2 picks up to the Knicks, so they haven't got loads of assets for the future. Let's move on to talk about Drew Holiday now. Loads of teams linked with him. We haven't heard many strong rumours for about a week until this morning, where the Celtics apparently emerged as favourites for Drew Holiday. The plan would be for them to send 3 first-round picks to a team that are in the top 10, and then send that top 10 pick to the Pelicans. So, for example, your Cavs might take 3 picks in the first round just to get 3 tries, or the Knicks could, or the Pistons could. The Celtics would then get that 5th, 7th, 8th, 9th pick, and then they would trade that pick straight away to the Pelicans, straight up for Drew Holiday. And I don't know if they'd have to match some salaries as well. I imagine they probably would have to throw Daniel Tice and a few others in to match. What is your thoughts on Drew Holiday being in that team with I don't know how it would work financially. My brain's thinking there's no way you could have Hayward as well, but yeah.
I don't like this at all. I don't see the point. They don't need another guard, especially one that's like defensive minded, unless they're getting rid of Marcus Smart, in which case, yeah, plugs that gap. But he's going to be on bigger salary. And then my other thinking is, what are the Pelicans getting out of this draft? All right, they get a top 10 pick, but what are they going to pick? Where? I don't know. This one is a bit baffling to me.
If Holiday wants to leave, the Pelicans need to get something. So I guess are they being offered anything better than this? And do they want to take a pick? So they could pick whoever they rather than take someone else's player. That's the debate, isn't it? Drew Holiday's on 26 million this year, so you would probably need Smart, Tice, and then one young contract to mix up. And then the Celtics will be paying a lot of money for a few players. Yeah, interesting. I'm not sure either. I don't know which team is going to take 3 first-round picks either. Because there's a lot of this. Yeah, I don't think the Cavs will want 3 picks because a lot of the players in the top 20 are guard in the first round are going to be guards, which they don't want. I think the Knicks have already got enough young players. Like, I know they're not great, but you don't want to add 3 more. Well, there'd be 4 more because they don't add 4 more young players to this already young roster. I think the Pistons could be a really good shout though, because they are just void of any talent. But then again, what the Pelicans are going to do with the 9th pick, it's very difficult. But yeah, I'm not sure how this works. All I know is, without knowing what they give up, I think Drew Holiday can make them better. But salary-wise, yeah, they're going to have to give up something else. And without seeing what that is, I think it's a high-risk move for the Celtics, who could maybe just add a big and be better anyway.
Yeah, and I think getting rid of Daniel Tice will be a huge mistake for the Celtics. He was a real bright spark for them this year, especially in the playoffs. So, and they need the size. They need the bigs. Why would you trade one away for a defensive guard when you have a defensive guard on your roster already? It just makes no sense. So
yeah, you'd lose all the first-round picks as well that you would arguably take. Because I think if they don't trade them or whatever, they're definitely going to take a big.
Yeah.
So you'd lose the chance to take a big anyway because you've just traded all your first-round picks. In terms of salary cap as well, they're already on minus 33 million at the moment, and Holiday earns 25, so they would need to chuck in Marcus Smart, Daniel Tice, and probably Romeo Langford to make it work. Or if Enes Kanter opts in at 5.5 million, they could maybe keep Tice. Well, no, they'd probably have to go Tice, Kanter, and Smart. That does improve their team for me, starting 5, but I'm still not sure about the depth. And Marcus Smart is 26, not 31. So, yeah. Bit of a weird one, but apparently they're really keen. The only thing I do think is maybe the Pelicans would take Gordon Hayward back for a year because he's expiring. And maybe they could flip him again in 6 months and they wouldn't even need to give anything else up apart from the picks. If they did that, I'd be more keen because I think Hayward's going to leave next year anyway. But yeah, I'm not sure I'd be doing it if Smart and Tice were involved and a first-round pick / 3 of your own picks. Like either way, it's either 3 of your own picks or 1 lottery pick. So I think a little bit too much for me. But it would be a good trade for the Pelicans.
Yeah.
Cool. You're out.
I mean,
so far you got Mavs with a bit of Dinwiddie action, and then Russ being forced to Charlotte, and the rest you're out on. Let's move on to the next on the draft pick. So the Magic, the rumors are they're trying to package the 14th pick, which I've made that up. It's not the 14th pick; it's the 15th pick. They're trying to package the 15th pick and Aaron Gordon to somebody in the top 10, ideally top 5. For me, it could be any team because the Cavs could do with a player like you just took Patrick Williams in our last episode. Pistons, like we said, they need talent. The Knicks could take talent. But I'm interested in, would you think the Warriors, that would be a good pick for the Warriors? For me, I think that would be amazing. I think you've got Aaron Gordon and the 15th pick where you could still take a center at 15 and all you're giving up is number 2. And the Magic would probably take a point guard, you'd think, at 2, maybe a LaMelo Ball, probably.
Yeah.
Which makes sense for the Magic as well. I really like this trade for both teams. I think the Warriors would have to throw in their trade exception as well. I don't know how the finances would work, but the rumors aren't around the Warriors. It's any team in the top 10. So what do you think of the Magic trying to get rid of Gordon in the 14th to move up in a draft that's not that strong? And what do you think about Warriors and maybe your Cavs as an option?
They've been toying with moving him for a long time now, haven't they? The Warriors is the team that always keeps coming back up.
Yeah, it does.
It could be a really, really good move for both of them if they can pair Ball with Vucevic. That sort of 1-2 punch could work really well. They showed some great fight in the bubble this year, and they've got a couple of good scorers, a couple of good shooters, but they've got quite a lot of guards anyway. They might go elsewhere with the pick. They can still make it work.
They could pick Wiseman, I guess, but couldn't they? But they've got Mo Bamba, haven't they, as well, who's a big.
Yes, yeah.
Where
do you play Gordon as well? Is he a small forward or power forward primarily?
In that team, I think that would be their new lineup of death, wouldn't it? Draymond at the 5 and then Gordon at the 4. He could even be a 6th man. I've just checked his contract as well. He's due 18 million this year, and then 16 the next year. So all they would have to do is chuck in the 17 trade exception, then one young player, literally any young player you want, because they're all about £1 million. So the Warriors would only have to give up the second pick, and he's 25. I really like this trade. I don't know if they then move Wiggins in the future and try and go Gordon at the. Yeah, but I don't know. For me, if you're 6 options, so you got Steph and Clay, obviously 1, 2, they'd probably still start Wiggins at the 3. And they'd probably start Draymond at the 4 and then Looney or Chris at the 5 and Gordon come off the bench or whatever. But if your top 6 players are those 5 plus Gordon as your 6th man and Looney and Eric Pascal / whoever you pick at 15 coming off the bench, I think that's quite an exciting team for the Warriors. And Gordon being 25, you'll have the bird right, so you can extend him in 2 years' time, and Wiggins will be off the deal by then, so he could be your next player. So I really like it for the Warriors. I'm just not sure who the Magic would be targeting, but I don't know what other teams would want to trade for it. Do you think the Pistons would want to do that move just to get Gordon in for a bit of extra talent? I'm not sure if that fits with Blake.
No, they're very similar players. Very similar.
They are. So the top 10 draft order is going in reverse, because I don't think the Minnesota Timberwolves are going to do this. So at 10, you've got Phoenix. 9, you've got Washington. They're 2 teams for me that could look to add Aaron Gordon, but you're only moving up 5 spots. You've got the Knicks at 8, the Pistons at 7, the Hawks at 6, which is another cheeky option. The Hawks.
That's a great option, actually.
Yeah, then the Cavs and Bulls, who I don't see it for with the players they've already got. Charlotte at 3. Well, they're going to get Westbrook, so I don't think they're going to do it. And then Golden State at 2 that I like. And then Minnesota at 1. I don't think you'd trade the first for Aaron Gordon. But yeah, Phoenix, Atlanta, and the Warriors for me seem like really legitimate options.
Yeah, this is something that could definitely work for any of those teams. Really, really like it. I'd love to see Aaron Gordon go to a different team and actually play for something, because Orlando have been that real middling team for the past X amount of years. They've been getting 7th or 8th, being bounced in a sweep in the first round of the playoffs, and they've got the bones of a potentially good team, and they put runs together, but they've never had that, I don't know, whatever they need to get them over the edge. So I'd like to see him thrive on a different team for a while.
Yeah, I agree. I'm very excited about the Hawks or Warriors prospects with that trade. So one more Warriors one, just a quick one before we move on. Another rumor is that the Knicks could send Mitchell Robinson, their center, and the number 8 pick to the Warriors for number 2. Do you think that's enough for the Warriors? They get the center that they would probably pick at 2, Mitchell Robinson, who's a bit more experienced than Wiseman because he's had 2 years in the and they stay in the top 10 at number 8. Is that a good trade for both parties? And you'd assume the Knicks would just go all out and take the Melo then at number 2.
Yeah, you think so? It still works. Why not?
It's a cheap move, isn't it, for the Warriors to improve without doing any of the big trades yet, and they've still got a trade they could make afterwards.
It's not exciting, is it? But it gets the job done, so why not?
Yeah, I think the Knicks would do that in a heartbeat. I think they'd love. The rumours are they love LaMelo Ball, and that is a very Knicks pick.
That's a hugely Knicks pick.
That is a very Knicks pick. Let's go on to the last rumour then. This is a player that we kind of both thought would be the most likely to be traded, and the rumours have calmed down a bit. It's Chris Paul. Apparently, wants to move to LA or New York the most, so that gives you 4 teams. But a late suitor that seems to be favourites now are the Phoenix Suns. Apparently, the trade would definitely involve the 10th pick, so that OKC Thunder would get another top 10 pick, another first-round pick, which is nuts. And that'd be like 8 or 9 first-round picks, which is insane. We know they want to get rid of him. We know they want to work with him to make a trade. Apparently, he's not turned down the idea of going to Phoenix yet, but it's still early talks. What do you think about the Suns getting CP3, pairing him next to Booker, and what do you think about the Thunder getting another first-round pick? Do you think that's as much as they can hope to get?
Yeah, I think I like that. Both options, love it. OKC keep building that draft stock ready for. They are the Celtics of 6 years ago, or whatever it was, when they traded everything to the Nets and took all their draft picks. And Phoenix need to do something to keep Devin Booker there. We said it before the other day. how long is he realistically going to stick around if they're not being serious about adding talent to that roster and depth and experience? And he is great. Him as your main point guard with Ricky Rubio off the bench, you can't ask for much more there. That's gorgeous. That is. I'm a big fan of this move. I'd quite like to see that.
Well, the only issue is apparently Rubio would have to go the other way to afford it. So the Suns can make
Rubio, didn't it?
$21 million in cap space. But Mr. Chris Paul, this is a big number, Ben. Mr. Chris Paul is due $41 million for this season. So the Suns would basically have to clear another $20 million. So Rubio and somebody else. I think it's a good fit. He said New York or LA. Obviously, you like LeBron James, and for me, there's no way the Lakers can't create 41 million.
Yeah,
I think it's impossible. I think the Clippers could create it, but they would only have those three players, and it might involve a sign and trade for Harrell. So I'm not sure that the Thunder would want to take bloody Montrezl Harrell on a huge deal. The Nets, it wouldn't fit with Kyrie. I don't see it. So I think Phoenix could be his best option in terms of cap space. We've gone on about this before. The Hawks have got 49 million. I don't think he fits with Trey that much. The Pistons could afford him and pair him with Blake, but it seems like the Thunder want to they want to involve Chris Paul, don't they, in the conversations? That they love the fact he helped them so much over the last year. So there seems to be a mutual respect. I don't think they'd send him to the Pistons. So for me, I think it's the Suns who would have to trade players, or like we said before, the obvious fit is the New York Knicks, but the rumours are the Knicks do not want to lose many young assets now because they have a big trade lined up in the future. They don't want to take the risk of doing that now. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. It seems like Suns or Knicks, or maybe Suns or no one for Chris Paul.
Yeah, what would you package? Rubio and Tyler Johnson? That would kind of make the salary fit. Yeah. You don't really want to be getting rid of Oubre.
No, I don't think they want to get rid of Oubre. I'm just looking at their salary cap for the Suns. Like I said, they can make 21 million quite comfortably. They need to get to 41. So if you add Rubio in, which is the rumor, that already gets you to 38 million. So then they've only got to trade one more player. So I think it could be maybe a Ty Jerome campaign sort of deal.
Yeah, that's fine. I'd do that in a heartbeat.
I don't know if that salary cap will include the 10th pick at the moment because they're projecting it. So they've probably added the 10th pick. So if you get rid of the 10th pick, which would be a good 5.5 million in year one, maybe 7.5 actually. I think, they could probably just do Rubio and one of the 1 million players in the 10th pick for Paul. Makes sense. I think that improves them. And I'd be excited for that trade if I was a Suns fan.
Yeah, love it.
Cool. All right, let's round it off then. So I just wanted to ask, we've spoken about loads of players. Oh, no, there's one more rumour we didn't mention, sorry. It's LeBron James's team. There's rumours that they are trying to trade Danny Green and Kyle Kuzma for DeMar DeRozan. I was a big fan of this trade in one way. I was a negative. I didn't like it because it improves the Lakers, in my opinion. I don't want them to win. But I was a fan, as in when I looked at it, I think it improves the Lakers. But you did not agree with me. You didn't like the shooting. So
I think
you wouldn't do this trade.
On this trade, DeRozan is old. All he can do is cut to the rim. At least Kuzma offers a potential option to shoot from a corner. And Danny Green...
He's a very good mid-range shooter, to be fair to him.
Danny Green looks dangerous. But you could flip Danny Green, I think, to a different team for an up-and-coming shooter. Or, I don't know, I think there's better options than trading these two for DeRozan. I'd much rather keep Kuzma around, I think, than go for DeRozan.
I don't think there's many stars they can get, though, with their slate. That's their issue. He's only got 1 year left as well, so it'll be a 1 year deal, 27 million. That takes up all the cap, obviously all the cap that you get from getting rid of those two players in the trade. But I think it improves them. I don't know what else they can do. I think they need to do something if they want to challenge again next year. But I'm sure there'll be other stars that maybe they could look at. But Ben is a no on that trade. So yeah, I wanted to wrap it up with the last question that I was going to get to a minute ago. Top three players, Ben. Who do you think would be the top three, in whatever way you define it, either the best three or the most famous three players that will move teams this off-season, whether it's through free agency or trades?
Ooh, free agency or trades. This is big. Oladipo's going, surely.
That's one of your three, yeah. He would probably be in my top 3 or 5, so he'd be up there.
If he's put the request in and the rumours are true, Westbrook's going somewhere. We just don't know where yet.
Yeah, that's an all-star with a lot of money, so that's a big name to get traded. And I think Mr. Chris Paul could be the third one.
Yeah, that was who I was toying with in my head for that third spot. So I reckon those are the 3 biggest candidates. Like we keep saying, Drew Holiday gets a lot of mentions here and there, but is he? I think another podcast summed it up really, really well. The No Dunks podcast. They said he's been so constantly underrated that now he could potentially be overrated.
Yeah, especially at that age. He's older now. I prefer him as a player to Westbrook, but there's no way if you polled 1,000 people, more people wouldn't know Westbrook. He's much more of a famous, established name, even though I think Holiday's probably a better fit nowadays for basketball. But yeah, I agree. I think Holiday probably has got to that stage. A lot of people talk about him being an all-star, but that was 10 years ago. So I like Holiday, but there's a little bit of a fault. I agree, there's a bit of a false narrative. Cool, so that's your 3. My 3 would probably be the same, but I just got a sneaky feeling it wouldn't be now. I think trade deadline, so come February, March time, whenever they make the new trade deadline, I have a feeling that the Warriors could move Wiggins. They could move him. And whether they trade this year's pick or not, and they get another pick, like whether they want, I don't know. Rather than a pick for this year's draft, they take another pick for next year. Then they've got 3 first-rounders next year, and they package 3 first-rounders and Wiggins for someone like a Bradley Beal. I don't know. I think they could maybe move.
So dangerous.
Yeah, and I know Wiggins isn't as good a player as the players we've mentioned. I probably prefer him actually to Westbrook. That's how low I am on Westbrook when he's getting paid $40 million a year. But I just think what the Warriors could get back from doing some crazy Wiggins future draft pick trade, I think that's what can make it the biggest trade. But I would agree that Westbrook and Paul are by far the biggest names this offseason. And I don't rule out the fact that Gordon Hayward could still go to the Pacers as well, probably rounding out as another option. But
yeah,
we'll have to see, mate. All I know is that we'll be very busy talking about these moves throughout the next weeks and months.
I don't know if my mind's going to be able to keep it all in. We'll see.
Yeah, we had a chat about on a couple of podcasts about how many of the top picks are going to get traded, and I just think there's going to be a lot of movement now. The amount of rumours we've heard today about players being moved, I think it's going to be a crazy off-season, but we'll be here to cover it all. So all that's left for me to say is thanks for you, Ben, for joining me as always, and we're now going to pass over to my interview with James Plowright, where we talk about prospects, we talk about the top picks, we talk about options across the draft, some sleeper picks, and a little bit of gambling on the NBA draft as well. But cheers for joining me, Ben.
No worries. Bye.
I'm now joined by someone who'd have heard in our last podcast. It's analyst James Plowright. How are you doing, James? Good to speak to you again.
Yeah, good to speak to you again, Liam.
So, Mr. LaMelo Ball fan, you picked him at number 3 in our mock draft. But I kind of wanted to start off with the Hornets in general and ask you how you became a Hornets fan and how you came into covering the draft and why you love the draft so much, because I know it's kind of feast or famine over here, whether people enjoy it or not.
Yeah, I mean, how I became a Hornets fan, that was an interesting story. So when I was at school, I had a good friend who played basketball to a good level, eventually went on scholarship, played D3 in America. And he started a school team, so I kind of got into basketball with him a little bit. And, everyone had the team that they had to support. And I just didn't have one. I had no ties to basketball, NBA, anything. I was probably about, 13, 14 at the time. So went to the States on holiday. My grandma lives out in Alabama, so I was out there. Not exactly a tourist hotspot in the United States. No. I went into a Reebok store, and there were 2 jerseys in there. There was a LeBron James Cleveland Cavaliers jersey, and I knew who LeBron was, and I've never been one to be like, just let's pick the most popular guy and go from there. And there was one other jersey, which was a Charlotte Bobcats Adam Morrison jersey, who had just been drafted by the Bobcats. I didn't even know who the Charlotte Bobcats were. I didn't know where it was. I didn't know who Adam Morrison was. And it was some horrible traffic cone orange. And I was just like, you know what? Let's be different. Let's buy this jersey. And kind of went from there, snowballed, becoming kind of a big fan. Started writing about them for various kind of Hornets websites. And I founded my own website at one point, the Lottery Mafia, where we covered all the lottery teams in the NBA draft, and just got kind of really rolled up in the NBA fandom, really, and really just loved the kind of the difference, the stark contrast to the sport over here with the salary cap, draft picks. It was a completely kind of different sporting world, which was just really interesting to explore. And yeah, so kind of that's how I became a Hornets fan, really. For the draft, well, you can't be a Hornets fan if you don't know about the draft. In 16 years, we've made the playoffs 3 times. In the 16 years I've been a fan, and never made it out the first round, and only actually won 3 games in those 16 years, playoff games. On top of all that, we've only actually drafted in the top 5 twice with Cody Zeller and MKG. So we've not even been bad enough to kind of like get the good picks. And I think at first I kind of followed the draft, and it was very strange when I first became a fan. What is this? How does it work? And I didn't really get it. And then I think that the Bismack by Umbo draft really triggered something where I'm like, what the heck? We just traded up to select this guy from the Congo who no one's like ever heard of, who can speak 5 languages and has like a 7'6" wingspan. And then after that, I was like, right, I need to start digging into the draft and how it works. So since then, I've made mock drafts, big boards every single year, and kind of followed it really closely to try and kind of help educate myself and help kind of try and kind of inform Hornets fans of what you can expect from certain prospects.
Yeah, that Bismack Biyombo signing not looking as good now with that contract, I must be honest.
No, absolutely not. I think I'm trying to think who gave him that contract. It was Toronto, Orlando, or Lakers. One of those terrible contracts when the cap spike happened. But yeah, I mean, but Bismack, could be 40 years old now. There was always so many rumors about his age, and no one actually knows.
No, he's one of those. Similar to Bol as well. There's rumors about his age as well. But anyway, that's for another podcast. So going back onto the draft, we obviously had you on for our last episode, making the pick at number 3 for Charlotte. But we didn't spend loads of time talking about the other teams. So number 1, we have the T-Wolves, and number 2, we have the Warriors. We'll start with the Timberwolves. What do you think they should do with that first pick, and what do you think they will do? There's a lot of rumors that both these teams want to trade out completely for veteran stars. But yeah, what do you think they will do, and what do you think they should do?
I mean, I've heard a lot of things about the Timberwolves wanting to win now, wanting to trade the pick to get a veteran, and I honestly don't quite see why. Like, I don't see that roster really being like a serious contender for a playoff push next year. So I don't know why they were kind of like mortgaged the opportunity for a number 1 pick for like some middling veteran. I don't know, Aaron Gordon, just like a name to throw out there as someone who's potentially in the trade market. Like for me, that's not enough. For me, I just think they should take best player available. Like Carl Towns is absolutely an outstanding talent. D'Angelo Russell, not 100% sold on. I'd be very worried about avoiding taking someone because you've got D'Angelo Russell in your backcourt. Like, I know we just signed a big max contract last off season with Golden State before getting traded there, but he's not someone who I would 100% say, we can't draft another ball handler with him around. He's not showing that level of ability where he's just going to, pull teams to, be playoff teams. But if he's the lead ball handler, not at all, not in Brooklyn or Golden State last year.
Yeah, and I think the 2 max contracts is there make a difference as well. You've got Cat and, like you said, Russell both on a max. So I think they need to utilize the pick. I know they get paid well, but compared to what they're going to be trading for, if they trade for a veteran, they're going to be trading for someone who's on max or near max level money, you'd imagine. Whereas now I think it's clever for them to use this pick for who they'd want to be a star, but obviously not paying them that level of money for the 4 years. In terms of fits, there's been a lot of talk about an Anthony Edwards Wiggins comparison if they picked him. Where do you sit on Anthony Edwards fitting in with the T-Wolves of who they've got around them now?
I think he'd be my pick for them. I mean, he's the number 1 player on my board, so he'd be my pick for him, kind of irrelevant of that fit, because I still think they're just in talent acquisition mode. Very different to Golden State, who we'll come on to later. So he'd be my pick. Look, I think Andrew Wiggins comparisons, I don't really understand or get. They are. I think the big thing with Anthony Edwards is he is, physically, he's an outstanding athlete, like a complete elite athlete, like P3, which is where he's been working out during the draft process. And they normally do all like the combine measurements for the NBA. They normally kind of subcontract them in. He's been working down there, and he's like broken every record for like measuring power and explosion in all the jumping and power drills. Like they are saying that he is like an otherworldly athlete, and we didn't see that all the time with like his 80% of the time fadeaway jump shots at Georgia, but you did see flashes of it every now and then. And I think, he's got he has got a skill level. He only started really focusing on basketball full time at the age of 16. Never really been coached that well. Everything at Georgia was bent around him because Tom Crean was desperate to keep the local guy happy. And I think for me, that he oozes potential. Like he can be a 3-level scorer. He's shown passing instincts. I think if you look at his scoring ability, he can score in the paint, score in the mid-range, score from 3. He's not a shooter. Like he's not going to be a high percentage 3-point shooter, but he's going to be a scorer. Much like like how kind of Devin Booker plays. Like he scores at all 3 levels of the rim. I think Edwards can do that, but be a much bigger plus on the defensive end if he gets engaged. And the biggest thing I found hard to figure out, you hear him interviewed, like he is not an enthralling interview. Like you hear him at the night of the draft lottery, like he was like, yeah, I learned from my year at Georgia, I could do a lot of things like better. And it was just, you've heard him again at his pro day. He was saying he's been living in a pandemic his whole life. What the hell did that mean? Like, there's so many things where I'm like, is this guy just like really low character? Is he just not that bright? But then kind of the more I've delved into it, I'm thinking, actually, I think he's just a very immature people. People mature at different rates. He's, I think, the 3rd youngest prospect in the draft. And I think, watch the video with Mike Schmitz. I feel like he's talking to a 15, 16-year-old, like mentally. Like And I think it's going to be a big adjustment going to the NBA. I think, I think that's one of the big things. Is not his skill level, but that adjustment. So I don't think he's going to be someone who maybe will look great straight away. But 2-3 years into it, once he's matured a little bit, I think he could be an outstanding prospect.
Yeah, I think the Wiggins comparison and the only thing that they can kind of latch on to is what you spoke about there about the lack of effort sometimes. He's very inconsistent as an off-ball defender. He doesn't seem to focus. He doesn't seem to want to defend. And I think that's partly where that comes from. And also, they're both athletic players, whereas sometimes you look at Anthony Edwards and he's exploding and kind of running the rim and diving in for pick and rolls and stuff like that. But then other times, he doesn't even make an effort and you're just there like wondering where that effort's going to come from. But I agree with you. I think I had him down as the 4th youngest, but I think you're right. He is the 3rd youngest prospect now I'm looking at it. When you see that and the lack of time he played last year as well with everything that happened, I just think that he hasn't developed into a fully blown basketball prospect yet, but he's got the talent to.
Yeah, and I think the thing with Wiggins, and I saw this the other day, and I can't recall the exact number, I didn't make a note, but I think Wiggins' his time in Kansas, I think he had 10 to 15 games where he had no assists, and only like 2 games where he had 2 or more assists. And I think Anthony Edwards had like 1 or 2 games where he had no assists and 10 games where he had 2 or more. So like straight away there, you're talking about Wiggins as a black hole. The ball goes to him in the possession and it's going to end in like some mid-range jump shot. Anthony Edwards, he's got a great first step. Wiggins had athletic ability, but rarely used it. Edwards has some of those same criticisms, that's fair. But I just think he's a much better playmaker, and that's with his lack of experience in the game. So I do think in terms of like being part of a system, I think Edwards has got a much better ability to kind of read passing lanes and to distribute the ball.
Yeah, and we've heard good rumours and bad rumours about certain NBA prospects, as NBA draft prospects, and Edwards is one we've heard good rumours about. Apparently, he's done quite well in a lot of the workouts. We haven't heard a lot about the off-court meeting stuff, but in terms of the workouts, he's impressed. So you'd assume that either he's training hard or his physical attributes are just too good for these teams to turn down, because apparently everyone says that him personally just looks amazing. So I think that would be a good pick for the Wolves if they stay there. I'm with you. I don't think they can win anything in the next 2 years. And I think they should be going for that third or fourth year, just when the two max contracts are about to end, and go all in for year 3 and 4. So that's a good pick for me. Let's move on to talk about the Warriors, who are the most interesting team for me in this year's draft. They pick at number 2. I had CJ on, who's another draft expert, in my last podcast. We disagreed. He wanted them to pick LaMelo Ball to kind of do the whole Spurs draft pick, where they had Robinson, then they had Duncan, to try and extend the dynasty, whereas I was firmly behind, if they don't trade out, I think they should pick Wiseman. What do you think that they should do in terms of trading out? Do you think they should move back if they can? Or do you think they should just take the pick and take Wiseman or LaMelo at number 2?
I think I probably disagree with both of you. I think trade this pick. Like, that is the most... Everyone was saying it on the night the draft lottery when they moved up to 2. Everyone's like, they're going to trade it. It's a foregone conclusion, and I think they will. I don't see them staying at 2. If it was a different year where you had some higher caliber players, I think they would maybe try and get that transition player. But I don't see there's anyone that they can be that confident with this year. And they're putting so much smoke out there. Like, every single lottery prospect has been like linked with Golden State at some point or another. I think they either trade out totally or they trade back. I don't see them staying at number 2. I'm almost sure of it.
Yeah, that's what I would do. We were talking about a mock draft, and we didn't do any trades. I think Wiseman was the only fit for me in the top 5 on my board that works with them. But yeah, I would trade back if I could. I think the Knicks at 8 are a team that might be interested in doing some sort of trade up, but the Warriors are going to want a vet with that, and I don't think the Knicks have got anyone to offer. So I'm not sure how that will work out. But if they did make the pick, if they can't find an offer they like, or a veteran they like, do you agree that Wiseman is the better fit, or would you go with a LaMelo, or is there somebody else on your board that you're high on that you think could fit that system?
It depends what the Warriors want. I think they pick Wiseman. I don't think they pick LaMelo, because I think Wiseman could fit into that core you've got at the moment, and he would add to it. He would have a role in a team that has got, championship upside. I think LaMelo, he's someone who I think it'll be fantastic for him to be in Golden State in the environment with Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, Clay, Draymond. Like, I think they would hold him really accountable, and long term, that would be amazing for LaMelo's development. But I also think LaMelo could really hurt them in the next 2 years, because I don't think he'd be able to kind of be a key part of their rotation. And that, it depends how strongly they feel about their window. If they are thinking this is a 2 to 3 year window and we're going all out, I think it has to be Wiseman. If they aren't prioritizing a championship in the next 2 to 3 years, which feels like, well, of course they'd prioritize that. If they're not, then I think LaMelo does make sense, because I think he's got, a bit higher upside than Wiseman, and it would be a great place for LaMelo to fall with great veterans around him and a good culture there.
Yeah, I think for him personally, the Warriors have been an incredible fit. I think it would teach him more about basketball than he could wish. And I think the Knicks are his other best fit in terms of money. I think it would be a disaster to go to the Knicks probably for his development, but I think off the court, he would make a hell of a lot of money. So I think for him, those are the 2 teams he might want to land on.
Do you not think the New York's 8 plus Mitchell Robinson, you don't think that's enough for Golden State?
It depends how high they value Robinson, because they do like their centre be able to come out and shoot a little bit. Even Looney takes corner shots, and I'm not sure Robinson's got that upside to fit the system. But yeah, potentially. He's a cheap contract for another 2 years. He's not due a payday for the off season after next. So you've got quite a cheap big there for 2 years. Is he much better than Looney? He probably is defensively. But yeah, that might be interesting. I'm not sure that would be enough. I think that they've got their heart set on a star. Whether they can get that star or not, because they've got to trade that trade exception as well before the middle of December now with the new rules. So they've got that 17 million Iguodala trade exception to add on. So I think they'll be trying to do a deal where they can include both to get a star rather than someone like Mitchell Robinson.
Yeah,
but I think it improves their team more than Wiseman would, to be honest.
Yeah, and I mean that new 8 plus Robinson has been floated to everyone, I think, to the Timberwolves, to the Hornets, to the Warriors, and it's been kind of widely reported that's a trade out there which would make some sense for a few different teams, and it potentially would. Like I say, it just comes down to how high do they value Golden State? How do they value Mitchell Robinson? Yeah.
if they come out with Mitchell Robinson and I don't know, a Devin Vassell sort of type player, or maybe a Tyrese Halliburton for a guard off the bench or something at 8, then that would be a lot better than picking a Wiseman. But it depends what other offers are out there. But I agree with you. I think if they could pick anything, they would probably trade back just to save some salary as well as another option, because they've got another first round pick next year as well from the Timberwolves. So we'll have to see. But they're, for me, the most interesting team. And if they haven't made a trade by the time the first pick's in, I'll be interested to see how many trades we get on draft night, because I think they could kind of cause a bit of a knock-on effect of trade after trade.
100% agree.
But let's move on to talk about your team a little bit. We spoke about them a lot in the last podcast. In a scenario, if the Golden State Warriors do trade out, they trade out for someone who wants that upside of LaMelo Ball. So LaMelo Ball goes at 2, which is who you wanted to pick at 3. What would you do at 3? Would you be happy with the Wiseman fit, or would you want someone more you can build around? Because in this modern day NBA, we know that it's hard to really build around a center.
Yeah, I would select Wiseman. So Wiseman's 3rd on my board. I'd be happy with that selection. Like, I think Wiseman's got a base. He's going to be a useful player in the NBA for a number of years, just because of his ability to kind of move quite for someone 7'1". He's pretty flexible, moves around the court well, gets up and down, has good hands, shows shooting potential. I think at worst case he's going to be in the league. So I don't think he's like a risk to be a bust. His feel, his upside, how much can he handle the ball, his mentality, those are things that are questioned. I think if you ask a lot of Hornets fans, there's a lot of people who just don't like Wiseman. They view him as like again, like you say, modern NBA. Why are you drafting a center that high? But the question is, what else is on the board? Like, if there was a fantastic
wing, that's what I would be trying to find, a wing. But even in your big board, obviously the 4th and 5th are 2 more guards, which is what the same 2 that I have as in mine. And you don't really have a wing player till 6, 7, so it's difficult, isn't it, at number 3 to then kind of pick a player that maybe should go 7, 8, 9 just because they're a good wing player.
Exactly, and we do have a need at center. I don't think we have to address it in the draft. Everyone seems to say that because they've got nothing left to write about on mock drafts after 9 months of writing them. Everyone's like, oh, they've got to find a center. We don't. Like, we've got free agency this year. We got like 20 million cap space. Next year, we've got an obscene amount of cap space. I think there's only the Knicks have more cap space over the next 2 years in the NBA than the Hornets. So
32nd pick as well,
and the 32nd pick. So there's other ways to fill that position. Like Cody Zeller, he's a fine center. Like, he'd be a good backup center on most teams. He's a fine starting center. So I don't think it's like some mitigated disaster if we don't come out of the draft with a center. But I'd be happy with Wiseman. I think one thing I really like, I think he's a really smart guy. Everything I've heard, like, he speaks Mandarin Chinese to like a decent level, like, and ability to take information in, learn quickly, like that's something he'll need to do in the NBA. And I think you already saw, like, he's quite coachable. I think when you looked at him in high school, he was taking all these fadeaway jump shots, step backs, 3-pointers. You look at his 3 games at Memphis, and Penny Hardaway had him acting as a post-up big, diving to the rim, catching lobs. He still had like the old turnaround fadeaway jump shot where you're like, what are you doing there? But there was a significant change in his playing style, which again shows that he is someone who's going to listen to a coach. Like Penny said, we need you down low. So he went down low and he posted up, even though in high school he liked to kind of handle the ball a bit more. So there's a lot to like there. The one thing I say, the Hornets, James Borrego, his coaching staff, Jay Hernandez, they pride themselves on their play development. When they hired, when Mitch Kupchak hired Borrego, the word player development must have been said more than any other word. And it is because they know that they're in Charlotte. They aren't going to get big free agents, and they also probably aren't going to be picking right at the top of the draft in the next few years, back when he was hired 2-3 years ago. So they know they need to improve what they have. And that's been a real focus. And I think you look at the Hornets roster from last year, I would argue every single player, for the most part, has improved. Terry Rozier, career year. Devontae Graham, career year. PJ Washington, what a great start for his NBA career. Even like the second round guys, Caleb Martin, undrafted, was one of the best players in the G League, came and did well at the end of the year. Cody Martin, Jaden McDaniels, like all these guys, you saw them in Summer League and you think, okay, their projects. Jalen McDaniels looked lost in summer league. By the end of the year, he was like our best defensive center. And the work they do developing players. I mean, Jay Hernandez was a play development kind of coach, independent one, before working with the Hornets in the NBA. It's one of the big things. So I think putting Wiseman into that environment where everything is based around player development, I think that could be really good for him and really good for any player. But you've got to want to be coached. And guys like LaMelo Ball, like, there are worries. Would he want to receive that level of coaching? Would he want that level of, this is what you need to be told to do? Whereas Wiseman, I think he'd buy into it.
Yeah, I do look forward to some think pieces about LaMelo Ball if he gets drafted by the Hornets, working directly with MJ. I think that could come out, and that would be. I think we're going to see that written a lot. But in terms of Wiseman, I actually have him number 1. I'm a big fan of Wiseman. I like his upside a lot. I just worry about taking a center at 1, so I could see why the Timberwolves wouldn't. But I think for you or the Warriors, he's a perfect fit, and he may want to go to the Warriors to win now. But I think if he ends up at 3 to the Hornets, I think for his career development, it'll be just as good. I think long term he'll get maybe even more out of it, just with how many more minutes he'll play. Yeah, and I wouldn't argue with that pick.
And the other good thing I'd say is this year is, like, say the pick sucks, right? Complete bust. Yeah. The Hornets, look at the standings, they're not going to be above, again, like 5th, 6th best odds next year, you'd think, if the pick this year sucks. And next year's draft, you've got 7 or 8 guys, 6, 7, 8 guys
loaded.
who would all like be number 1 picks in this year's draft. So, like, worst case scenario, the pick gets blown, the guy sucks. Next year, it just puts you in a better position to get someone who you already know is going to be a base level starter, NBA All-Star. So, and it's buts and maybes because things always change, from this year to next year. But worst case scenario, you're still going to be in a good position as Charlotte with a heck ton of cap space and top 5 pick next year.
Yeah, I agree. And you've got 2 2s as well the year after. So you can always package 2s and stuff and even move up even more if it's just 1 or 2, if you ended up getting, I don't know, like a 7 or 8 seed. But yeah, we'll see what happens next year. I think it's going to be one of the most interesting drafts for a long time. There's a lot of talent. But in terms of the rest of this year's draft, so we just spoke about a couple of trade options there. I wanted to ask you, which teams do you think are the biggest candidates to trade up or trade out of the drafts? We'll ignore the Warriors because we spoke about them a lot already. But which other teams do you see as candidates to do that? For me, one of the main ones is the Celtics because they've got the 3 first-round picks and they've got 0 roster spots. So I think they need to move up and do something. But I'm not sure who's going to want to take 3 picks in this year's first round. What are your thoughts on the Celtics and who else do you see as candidates to trade up or down?
Yeah, I agree. Celtics on my list. They're the only team currently aggressively trying to move up in the draft. They're obviously targeting someone. No one's got a feel of who that is yet. People have speculated it might be a Kongwu. But they're definitely trying to move up. Like you say, who's taking 3 picks in this draft? I don't know. I think they might have to split them up or try and trade some of them for future picks to try and split up. But there's no way they're keeping all those 3 picks. Absolutely no way. But no, I think that's a really good one. I think other candidates I've got would be the Suns. So the Suns at 10. After their bubble performance, they're really going to be pushing on for playoffs next year. I think. You're already seeing some of the rumors about Chris Paul potentially being interested in trading for Chris Paul. If they did, that 10th pick would probably be part of that deal. So I think the Suns are someone that you could look at and, be pretty confident they'd look to move it. And, even last year they picked, I think, Cameron Johnson from UNC. He was a senior, oldest guy in the draft. I think they're going to be, I think that's just signals straight away that they're looking to win now. They don't want some project who's going to take 1, 2, 3 years. They want someone who could come in and contribute. And, in this draft at 10, there are a few people, but they'd probably get more value on the trade market. So there's someone who I think could definitely look to move the pick.
Yeah, after seeing that Chris Paul rumor as well, there's no way that 10's not going to be involved. But OKC are going to have so many first-round picks if they trade for a first in this year. It's going to be absolutely unbelievable. And at 10 for the Suns as well, I agree. I don't think there's loads of options. There's a couple of bigs I think that can really help win now. But you've got DeAndre Ayton, and you're not going to want to eat into his time. And I just don't think there's anyone that really fits them. I think they'll be taking the project, which maybe they don't really want to do. Another team that we've spoken about already a little bit is the Knicks. I think they love LaMelo Ball. I think that's everything we kind of heard already. I know it's draft rumor season, but everything you hear out of New York is that they love LaMelo Ball. But do you think there's any way they could trade up somewhere and get him? Because I don't think he'll be there past number 4. And I'm not sure who in the top 4, apart from Golden State, would want to trade with the Knicks.
Yeah, I think. Look, if New York said we want LaMelo Ball no matter what, they'll get him. Like, they can throw Mitchell Robinson, future first, Julius Randle. They can even put RJ on the table. They can move up if they really want him. I mean, I'd be really surprised if New York moved up to select LaMelo. I think with the new management group in there, Worldwide West and the CAA guys, I think, like, surely they've watched the New York Knicks from afar over the last 15 years, make dreadful decision after dreadful decision. And, like, if I was to take over the Knicks, I wouldn't be like, yeah, the first thing I need to do is make a splash, get this, flashy point guard who's got a bunch of a lot of issues going on, who's a lot of question marks, who wants to be the center of a team. Like, for me, that seems like is the most obvious thing to do. But it's also like, well, that's what the same mistakes the Knicks have been making for like the last 15 years. They've never taken someone like Tyrese Halliburton, who's like, just going to be a really good pro, huge high character guy. They're always swinging for these like, Stephen Marbury types. Like, for me, it seems like the wrong decision. And I'd be surprised that they would do that, being their very first move to move up in the draft to take LaMelo. They'd win the press conference, but I don't think it would necessarily be the best thing for the franchise and LaMelo going forward.
Yeah, and as a Hornets fan, do you see them even wanting to trade with someone like the Knicks at all? I don't really, with the whole East Coast rivalry, just in terms of they're both they want to be a playoff team in the next couple of years. So I don't think that you'll trade with them. I know the Timberwolves wouldn't want to trade the first pick for anything the Knicks could offer. But what are your thoughts about the Hornets and the Bulls? Do you think either of them could be trade candidates?
I could be wrong. I don't think the East Coast rivalry really comes into it that much. I think if anything, it would maybe be like a division rivalry because you got to play those guys 3 times, and if if you're playing them and that guy you've traded them blows you out each time, it looks worse to your fan base. But even then, I think it's something that used to matter more. I think NBA teams have just got a little bit smarter and realized that actually, in like the grand scheme of things, let's worry about what we do and let's make the right decision for us. Not let's make the right decision, or let's not make the right decision because we're worried about things biting us in the ass in the long term. So, yeah, I didn't really see that as a big issue.
Cool. Have you got any other teams you think are trade candidates? I've got the Pistons written down just because they need talent. And Kevin O'Connor mentioned a rumor that they might want to trade up, but I don't really know what they can offer. Is there any other teams that are on your list that might want to be trade up or trade backs?
I mean, I think there's a bunch later in the first and in the second. I think, for me, the 4 to like 10 range in this draft is the sweet spot. Like, you're talking about a really low value contract. You're talking about low risk. They're not going to have this pressure from being a top pick in the draft. And I don't think there's that much difference between the guys towards the, no one's going to be shocked if we look back in 5-10 years time and Denny Avdia or Obi Toppin or Patrick Williams are the best player in the draft. Like, I just don't see anyone being completely shocked at that, knowing what we know. So, there are always trades. For me, it's the sweet spot. It's where I'd want to be. I wouldn't want to be giving up assets. Assets to move up in the weakest draft since 2013. Like, it just seems like a bad idea with all the other things going on at the moment. It just seems like a really bad idea to start giving up assets now. So for me, I don't think so. I think when you look down into the first round, it's either like Dallas, Brooklyn. Guys like that, they could potentially look to move some of their picks, but not so much in the lottery. I mean, obviously anyone will move up or down depending if the deal is right, but I don't think anyone should be really aggressively looking to move apart from those that we've already mentioned.
Cool. Let's talk about a little bit more about those sort of sweet spot picks that you were talking about. So I've seen your big board, and we'll talk about a couple of more the other lottery picks. So in the top 10, you've got Obi Toppin and Okongwu, but Okongwu you moved down to number 9. I think I'm right in saying. What are your thoughts on those two as bigs then, Toppin versus Okongwu? Why have you got one ranked above the other?
So Onyeka, I got 9th on my board. Obi Toppin, I got 8th. We start with Obi first. Obi was the best player in college basketball last year. He was a great athlete. he's, offensively, he's probably one of the most well-rounded in this draft. Shoots a really easy ball, can dunk on people, can finish around people. I think defensively is where I've got a lot of concerns. How often do you see like these all offense, no defense players succeed in the league? Like Jahlil Okafor, is an example. Very different type of player, but in terms of was all offense, no defense, he can't get off the bench. And that's my worry. Like you look at those playoffs, and can you see like Obi Toppin playing big minutes? Like Kelly Olynyk's kind of an example similar to him. Like came off the bench from Miami, had one game where he scored like 20 points and looked great, but then like for the next 4 defensive sequences, the Lakers would just score and he'd be benched. And I just don't. You've got to be two-way players to play at the highest level, unless you're a James Harden-esque player. And I don't think Obi's going to be that. He was much bigger and much stronger than everyone in college basketball, especially in the conference that he played in at Dayton. I worry a little bit about his, what happens when he goes from being the biggest and most athletic to being actually a little bit undersized for his position. Like if you look at his comparisons, Obi Toppin, like physically, it's guys like TJ Warren. It's wings. It's not power forwards or centers. So how is he going to fare kind of going up against your Draymonds, etc., and your bigger guys when, something he didn't have to do on a regular basis in college. And when he did well. But, you're talking about a different level of caliber. So
he's a little bit older as well, isn't he? I think he's 22. So some teams love that because they're more experienced. But a lot of teams we've seen hate that because they want the younger prospect to spend more time to develop them before they hit peak age, which I understand.
Sure. And I think later on in the draft, like once you've got past the lottery, I think age is like overrated. Like people don't take 22-year-olds until the second round. I think that's a mistake. But I do think like how many, I don't know if he's 22 or 23 now, but how many people of that age have been taken like in the top 10 of the draft? The list is not many. No. Like Jimmy Fredette is on that list. He's one of those guys. I know there's been one or two others in recent years, but I know that list is not good. Like it is not a good list at all that you want to be taken. So, I think we have to defer a little bit to history here and say, hold on, like I don't view like Obi, if you looked at him on paper and you said he was 18, 19 years old, he'd be in conversation for the number 1 pick. But being the age he is, having the kind of some of the physical limitations, just being so stiff on defense, I'm just not, I'm happy to have him in my top 10, but I don't have him, right at the top of the draft.
Yeah, and then Okongwu's kind of the opposite. He still can score quite well on the interior, but he's more known for that hustle shot blocking, and he's a very good on-ball defender as well. Where do you see him fitting in the draft? Because there's been a lot of rumours that he can go a lot higher into the 5, 6, 7 range.
Yeah, I've seen some places linking Okongwu with the Charlotte Hornets. I don't think that would happen. I've seen so many things about the draft. I'll never say it will never happen, but I don't think it would. I think people are just looking at, the Hornets need a centre and Wiseman might be gone, so who's the next centre on the board? Oh, it's Onyeka Okongwu, so let's link him to Charlotte because that makes sense. As I said before, like we can find a centre elsewhere. We don't need to come out of this draft with a centre. Onyeka, he played actually like power forward at USC, so he played like another 7-footer. So a lot of the time he was forced to guard like the stretch power forwards out in the perimeter and did a decent job at it. And he is a versatile defender. His block percentage in college was outstanding for someone who's like only 6'9" and doesn't have a freakish wingspan. I think he's like 7'1", 7'2", but he's got like a really quick second jump. And he uses his physical gifts better than almost, I think, anyone in the draft. Like for someone who's not an elite athlete, doesn't have elite measurements or size, he uses his body so well on the defensive end of the court. So I think, he is a really smart defender. I think, look, we've not seen anything to suggest that he can shoot. His form on his jump shot, to me, a little bit of a hitch there. It doesn't look great even after the season finished. And he didn't really take many shots at USC. But, I have concern there about his offense, shooting the ball. And then defensively again, I do worry that he could be, he wasn't guarding the big centers on a regular basis at USC. He was guarding the power forwards. I do worry if he could get buried a little bit by some of the bigger, stronger NBA guys. He's, as I say, he's not the biggest, but he does have, great block percentage. So I do like Okongwu. There's a lot of buzz about the Wizards. Like, I don't know. I don't know if this buzzes. I mean, Tommy Shepard did an interview for the Wizards months ago with Kevin O'Connor, saying that they're going to try and move up in the draft and they want to select a center. Which, for any like general manager to come out and say that, just seems really weird. And so much has changed in the last like 6 months that could just not be relevant anymore. I don't know if everyone's just linking Okongwu to Washington because of that one interview, or they've heard more stuff recently. But everyone seems to kind of like chalked that up as if Okongwu's there and the Wizards are picking, it's a done deal. I think it's, he would make some sense there, but I do think he could go other places as well.
Yeah, that does seem like a strange move to lay out your draft strategy months in advance, so all your competitors know who you want to pick. So yeah, I'm not sure if I'd be trusting what the Wizards say at all. But I agree with you what you said earlier, that Boston would be a perfect fit for him. They're also known for their player development. They've got a good shooting coach as well there that might be able to kind of fix that hitch, because he's also not the best free throw shooter as well in his college career. So that'd be another fit that I like, but that would involve a trade up. There's no way he's going to be there for me at 14. Two other prospects I wanted to talk about in your top 10 before we move on to the next topic was, I'm not going to say his name. I'm going to get you to say his name. You've got him ranked 10. His first name is Precious. And how do you say his surname?
Precious Achiuwa.
Yeah, because you're a lot higher than him. I think the consensus was 20. I read, and you've got him at number 10. So what are your thoughts on him? Where do you see him fitting in the NBA?
I love Precious Achiuwa. So he played in Memphis. He actually started the year as playing like small forward, power forward next to Wiseman. Then obviously Wiseman suspended and eligible, and they moved into center. And Precious had always played on the wing in high school, and was very raw, to say the least, on the wing with his handle and decision making, and was pretty erratic. If you watch like the McDonald's All-American game and the Hoop Summit, but he's just absolutely everywhere. Like, plays with one of the best motors in the draft, has elite physical gifts in terms of he's a pogo bouncer. He's got really long arms, blocks shots, gets in passing lanes, but he doesn't really just know how to like direct all this energy that he has, and made some pretty awful decisions. And then when Wiseman got suspended, he moved to center, and he'd never played center before, and basically led Memphis to having like one of the best block percentages in the country for any college team. Was a big part of that, and went from never been playing on the wing to now all of a sudden, instead of handling the ball and shooting threes, on the wing, he was just kind of playing as a rim runner, defending, switching everything 1 through 5, getting out in transition, catching lobs, sealing smaller guys and mismatches. And all of a sudden the game simplified for him, and he just absolutely excelled. Like, his numbers are just incredible, considering he'd never played the position before. And now kind of, I think that's probably where I'd see him going forward as a 5, not so much the small forward, power forward. Now, the question some people have asked is, but does Precious still view himself as that small forward, power forward? Because he does like to take threes and do things that you see like the likes of Tatum and stuff like that do, and he's just not got that ability. But he has shown shooting touch. His percentages aren't good, mainly because of his shot selection, because I think there's still part of him that wants to be that kind of go-to guy shooter. But I actually like his form, even though sometimes it'll be like a complete air ball, and sometimes it'll look so smooth. But his form generally is pretty consistent, and I really like him. But I think he's someone who's got offensive upside. He'll score points just from rebounds and lobs and putbacks, but has shooting upside as well. And defensively, I think he's just an absolute switching monster. I think it'd be a nightmare for a guard to go up against him.
Do you think the Montrezl Harrell comparisons are fair? In terms of the way they play on offense, or not? Because I know that Precious is kind of viewed as a much better defender than what Montrezl was coming out and what he still is now.
Absolutely. I think that Montrezl is pretty undersized. Precious has got much more size and length straight away. I do think he's kind of a similar guy where he plays with the same energy that Montrezl does. Like, you always know Montrezl is on the court, and you're going to know that Precious is on the court. It's not always going to be good, but you're going to know he's certainly going to make an impact of some sort. He's like, you're going to be a really high variance player. You get 9 out of 10s and 2 out of 10s with him on depending what day of the week it is. But I just think defensively is where Precious can really excel, and that's something that Trez can never really do. He's not as mobile, kind of switching on to guards. He's certainly got a lot better since being at Louisville. But Precious, for me, just in terms of the block numbers, the steal numbers, is a different level as a defensive prospect than Trez.
Okay, cool. And then the other person I want to ask you about is one of my favourites in the draft, Denny Advia. A Warriors link, but they've been linked to everyone. For me, his personal development would be very, very well suited to the way they play. But yeah, what about Denny kind of excites you as a prospect, and where do you see him playing at the next level in terms of position-wise? Because I know he likes to be on the ball a lot, but obviously with his size, he's got that wing size as well.
Yeah, I view Denny as probably more of a 4. I think also he's not that athletic, but he's actually got a sneaky good first step. Like he knows how to use a little hesitations to get past his guy, and I think you put him at the 4, and that's one of his key things is once he can break past his first man, he's got fantastic passing instincts and he can pick apart the defense. And I think if you play him at the 3, you're suddenly going up against much kind of quicker, niftier, more agile guards. Or if you play him at the 4, I think you'll be able to come up against some more slow-footed guys who he can kind of beat off the dribble a little bit more. So I probably view him as a 4. I think his most impressive thing to me is just his ability to, get out and transition, pass and transition. I love his playmaking. I really do. He was some guy I was really kind of high on early in the process. My concern with him is just the shooting. His free throw percentage is not good. It's often a good indicator for your 3-point shooting percentage, although he did shoot it better when he came back. And also the level he played at. He played most of his minutes in the Israeli league. I think maybe Bryce Cotton was like the MVP of that league or something like that, like an ex-Spurs NBA player. So the standard of that league I'm not thrilled about. But I think one thing you worry sometimes about international players is like adjusting to the States, being in America, being in the NBA. Denny speaks really good English already. I feel like he's been preparing for the NBA his whole life. So I don't see like that transition being a real issue for Denny. I just more think, similar to Darius Saric in some ways, he's more of a back to the basket player. But I think he could it's a strange skill set. Somebody who's maybe a really good passer, a decent defender, but maybe struggles to shoot. I don't really know how many power forwards out there have that skill set right now.
Yeah, I'm high on him, and it wouldn't be surprised me if he ended up going somewhere in the top 6 with some sort of trade. I don't know if he fits fully in Atlanta, but if someone wants to trade up to number 6, I wouldn't be shocked. But yeah, I really like him, so I hope he goes high. I think he'd be a great fit for the Warriors, but there's no way they're going to draft him unless they trade back, which maybe is who they want to trade back for. But we'll have to see on draft night. So next, let's go and talk about a couple of other players maybe that are on your list. So have you got any other players that have got a super high ceiling that maybe we haven't spoken about yet that you think could be a steal later on in the draft or in the mid-lottery range?
Yeah, I mean, the boring answer here for me is the one we've already talked about, is Anthony Edwards, like that, because from when I do my draft rankings, I'm always looking basically at ceiling for the most part, like is 80-90% of what I value, because I think that's what the draft is for. Like you can draft for role players if you're in. I'd say there's probably about 3 or 4 teams every year who I would say, yeah, go into the draft looking for role players. The rest should be trying to find that one in however many who becomes an all-star. I think the obvious guys are you guys you'll hear like thrown around as a name like Jaden McDaniels because he's super young, super athletic. He's like a 6'9" forward. He went to Washington last year, actually played with Isaiah Stewart. Had a terrible year. Like he was a top 5, top 10 pick coming into the year. Like kind of similar body type to Jason Tatum. Was supposed to be able to handle, should be able to shoot. But like he got in foul trouble a heck of a lot. He got like 9-10 technical fouls at Washington. Started getting benched towards the end of games. Like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong from at Washington. At the same time, you look at the draft process now. He's one of those guys you see in an empty gym. He can jump, he can switch, he can handle, he can shoot. He's a guy that I think will look great in the kind of workout process they're going through. So he's someone you hear about being a high upside guy. I'm not so sure just because I think you have to have high basketball IQ to have high upside. And Jaden just hasn't quite shown that enough. I do like him, but I think actually more of his role could be as like a switchy defensive player more so than some ultra high upside offensive guy. RJ Hampton is another guy you'll hear. I'm not so high on him. he's probably, he'd be a good NBA athlete or a very good NBA athlete straight away. If he can add things like a jump shot and passing straight away, you've got someone who with good size, good NBA athleticism, like 6'5" guard, played out in New Zealand in the same league as LaMelo this year. And he's actually been working with Mike Miller, ex-Grizzlies player, and has been working with him since the kind of shutdown happened, and he's been his shooting coach and really working on that jump shot, which is a real weakness of RJ Hampton's game. I think
he was well hyped, wasn't he, before the draft, alongside someone I asked you about off air, which was Cole Anthony. They were both deemed as top 5 to 10 prospects when they came out of high school, and they both kind of fallen down draft boards as well. So do you see a similar story with Cole Anthony as well, that he's got a high ceiling but hasn't quite hit his potential like an RJ yet?
Yeah, I really like Cole. I mean, you see mocks now have him in like the 20s. I think that's crazy. I think he's a surefire lottery pick in my eyes. Again, one of these guys, and that's what I always look for draft prospects is, when everything goes wrong that could go wrong, and you're still like standing out as a good player, that's a good sign to me. So like Cole this year, like the worst spacing probably of any NBA draft prospect on that UNC team, the worst UNC team there's ever been. He got a knee injury, had to have surgery, actually came back after his surgery, which I don't think enough people give him credit for. How many top 5, top 10 picks get injured in the draft, shut it down, they leave their team, floundering. Cole came back, even though he wasn't 100%, rushed back for his team, try and help them get to the NCAA tournament, and also just for his teammates. And I think that's something that like a lot of people forget about. But again, you look at Cole's game in like the Nike Hoop Summit or the McDonald's game. I think he might have got MVP in both, or co-MVP in the Hoop Summit game with Nico Mannion.
Yeah, he did.
And he was, again, just outstanding. And his passing was something that he just controlled the whole offense. And for like in those all-star Hoop Summit McDonald's type games where you've got a bunch of people who've come together for a few weeks who don't play together, he controlled his team really well. He ran it like an NBA point guard. And I hear people talking about Cole like he's just going to be some guy who won't dribble a pass but will stand and wait to shoot the ball, which I just don't agree with at all. I think NBA spacing will really help him score at the rim. It's not going to be 2, 3, 4 guys collapsing on him every time, and I think he has got the passing ability to make other teams pay if they do that. So I'm a big believer in Cole. I think everything went wrong that could do. I still have him, for me, he's like a borderline top 10 pick. The only reason, to be honest, is there's just such a glut of point guards in the league at the moment. Like, I think, Cole Anthony, he can definitely be a good backup point guard. Could have upside as a starter as well.
Yeah, I'll be shocked if he doesn't go in the top 15, even though you're right. I've seen a lot of mocks that have got him going like 21, 22, but I wonder if that is due to the amount of point guards in the league and the amount of point guards in the top 15 as well, with like Halliburton as well, players like that are valued higher than him. But yeah, I like Cole as well. A couple of other players I wanted to ask you about, sleeper lottery picks then. Someone I'm super high on, which is Desmond Bane. What are your thoughts on him? And then a player as well that another player, Tyrell Terry, who I'm not as high on, but Kevin O'Connor, for example, really is from the Ringer.
Yeah, I really like Bane. He's one of those guys, like, if you're a contending team, just take him. Like, if you're one of these Lakers, Mavs, Brooklyn Nets, something like that, he's just perfect fit for those guys. Can shoot the ball really well. It's like not just like a lot of the shooters you see are kind of like rail thin guys. He's actually really thick, good, strong guy, uses that when on drives to the rim and defensively. Also playmates as well, averaged over 3 assists a game, decent assist to turnover ratio. So not just a shooter, can do a little bit of everything. Not the quickest, not the most athletic, but he's only ever going to be making plays off someone else's creation. So, he doesn't need to have that like first step or that athleticism to explode through 2 people or to beat 2 people off the dribble. Like, I don't see him needing that. So for me, he fits perfectly around one of these better teams where he can fall into a role and he can be, a perfect rotation player off the bench. Tyrell Terry, he's not actually in my first round, which is probably quite controversial, I think. I just don't see it. I know he's grown an inch since Stanford, like the season finished at Stanford, and he's apparently put on 15 pounds, and like that is important because when I did watch this film, like he was just so small. I struggled to see him, and just not just he's played so small, didn't have elite quickness. Someone like Kemba, Kemba's tiny, 6 foot. He's always been listed at 6 foot. I've stood next to him. He's not that much taller than me, and I'm 5'10". But like, Tyrell Terry. I just don't see him finishing around the rim. Like he's a good pull-up shooter, but doesn't have that like step back shot or anything like that. He's an okay passer. I just don't see it really. I think he can be like a bit of a flamethrower shooting point guard off the bench. But that's like all max for me. I don't see him having starting upside because the other thing is like defensively, he's just awful. So, but one guy that I just wanted to touch on, Kyra Lewis is actually my sixth ranked prospect, which again is probably quite different to consensus. And Alabama point guard was actually a sophomore this year, but was entered college early for a year, so he was actually the same age as most freshmen this year, and is still one of the youngest players in the draft. And he played for I think Avery Johnson down in Alabama. Had an absolutely terrific year. Can shoot the ball. Is an absolute blur, has complete speed. De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah, he's crazy
speed.
fast.
Yeah, like De'Aaron Fox type speed. Not the athlete that De'Aaron Fox is, but like in terms of just being able to get up and down the floor, passes the ball well. Is like actually a good rebounder. I've seen people say like they're worried about his size and frame. I don't have that concern. He's like 6'2", 6'3". Like I've not seen him getting beasted defensively. I've not seen that be a huge issue. And he's one of those guys in the big games who really came to play. Like they went to, I think, overtime against Auburn, and he had like a triple double. And I just absolutely love him. And he's the guy who doesn't get too high, too low, which I think you need from your point guard. He's just really consistent. And I'm really high on Kyra Lewis.
He's a very, very good off-ball defender as well. A lot of that is to do with the speed you spoke about, because it's hard for guards to get away from him when they're playing off-ball. But the film I watched of him, for me, off the ball, he's one of the better defenders that you're going to see in the top 20 of this draft. So, I think he's a good pick. I think it was the weight issue, I believe. I think someone told me he weighed under 170 pounds. I think I listened to on a different podcast,
sure.
Which might be the concern. But like you said, he's just turned 19, I believe. So in terms of growing in an NBA strength and conditioning program, there's a lot of upside there.
Yeah, and the other thing is like this draft is now 6 months later than it normally would be when these guys are getting drafted, or not quite 6 months, but like guys like now 19, when actually draft time they were still 18. Like, and I think NBA teams don't worry so much about thin people unless they're like 6'10" and they've got a frame like Alexei Pokusevsky. They don't worry so much about weight. It's more height I think they are concerned about, because any NBA team, like there is no S&C coach who's going to say, if we get him in our gym, every S&C coach is going to think I can put on 15, 20 pounds for him, no problem. Like what S&C coach is going to be like, no, I can't do it. I'm not good enough at my job to make Kyra Lewis 15 pounds heavier. Like, so I think every NBA team will always draft people thinking this is what we can do. And it's not always the case. Like guys like Sean Livingston never put on a pound from the day he was drafted. Like, has always been super rail thin. But I don't see Kyra really being one of those people. And the speed is one of his strengths as well.
Yeah, Lexi that you spoke about previously, that's someone I'm irrationally high on. I spoke about him in the last pod, so I won't get too much detail today, but someone's going to draft him. He's either going to be the worst draft pick in the first round, or he's going to be absolutely incredible. He's a crazy prospect. Another one I wanted to ask you about was someone that apparently is flying up draft boards. He's the last person to talk about on my list, and that's Patrick Williams. He's an interesting prospect to me because about 6 months ago, he was consensus 22, 24 sort of region. Kevin O'Connor had him at 16, and then he's spoken about that there's rumours that he could be going around the 12 to 8 sort of range now. Teams are really high on him. What are your thoughts on Patrick Williams, who's a wing out of Florida State?
Yeah, I'm not the highest on Patrick Williams. I do see what like other people see in terms of the upside. He's got shooting ability. He can play the 3-4. He's got a great frame, like really broad shoulders. Good wingspan.
He's a good shooter for the strength profile that he has as well, isn't he? That's the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do see it. I'm just not convinced that he'll get there. More so than kind of other prospects I've got ahead of him. I think he's one of those where you watch him and you think, wow, this guy's really raw. and then you watch him again, you think, wow, this guy, for someone that raw, has got shows some real polish. Really inconsistent, came off the bench at Florida State, but I think that's more about kind of how good Florida State were in the system that they had there. I think he's, for me, one of the hardest guys to evaluate because, you know, if you were to select him on what he did in college and like his high school tape, he's probably a borderline first-round pick, maybe not even a first-round pick, but it's all about projecting with him, projecting out and forward. And with guys like that, I always think it comes down to, well, you need to know what's his mentality, what's his drive. You need to speak to the people around him, the coaches, the people who've played with him. And, you know, we as fans are never able to do that. NBA teams, obviously, from the way he's flying up these draft boards, feel that he's going to reach that potential. And, you know, that's great to hear, you know, that he's going to, if he's going to move up that well.
Yeah, I think a lot of the rumours are based upon these workouts that the teams are finally allowed to schedule in over the last month or so. But some teams fall for the kind of workout warriors and some people don't. So it's kind of what each individual franchise likes, because it's very difficult to judge someone just based on a workout in an empty gym. But apparently he's done very well. We'll have to see kind of where he ends up on draft night. Cool, so that's all the players that I wanted to talk about. If you've got any more, let me know. But if not, do you want to move on to talk about some prop bets?
Yes, I do. And this was something that I messaged you about. I was like, Have we got time at the end to talk about some NBA draft prop bets? Because I've been keeping an eye out for now. I mean, over the years, the NBA draft I find is one of the easiest places to make money. Some little bit of gambling here and there. And this year I've just been having a look. So Paddy Power have just released their kind of draft position prop bets. I don't know how many of the bookies have at the moment. I'm sure some will close to the time. But
Sky Bet and William Hill haven't yet, so I think they're going to be late arrivals when they see what the odds are like from other bookies first.
Yeah, so I was looking through, and I actually kind of put out some Twitter polls and spoke to some people about what do we think the best bets are of all the ones available. And there was two that really stood out to me. One which I would put a large amount of capital on. So the first one is actually about I spoke about Patrick Williams. So the over-under on his draft position is 11.5. Which
I'd be going over.
You'd be going over.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, you see, I for everything I've seen reported, like Detroit apparently really like Patrick Williams at 7. I've heard that the Spurs are as low as Patrick Williams will go at 11. So for me, I've hammered the under there. Absolutely hammered the under on that. I think he'll get picked before 11. I don't agree with it. Like, I got him 16 on my board, but from everything I've heard, like Spurs is as low as he will go. He can go as high as 7, and he'll go somewhere in that range. Like, I've not heard anyone saying that he would go 12 or later in number of weeks as we approach the draft. So for me, that's something that I would jump on. The other one that I have is Obi Toppin. So the over-under again is 4.5 for his draft position. I mean, I don't think he's going top 3 straight away. So then the question is, well, what is the chance that he goes 4 to the Bulls? And you see the Bulls have got Wendell Carter, Lauri Markkanen. There's a report out the other day that they actually like Lauri Markkanen more than Wendell Carter, who's their power forward. And that's where Obi Toppin would play. So I think the Bulls' chances of taking Obi Toppin are, I'd say, pretty low percentage, like 15, 20%. And then after that, you your money. So if he goes 5th, 6th, or 7th, like, you're making money there. So for me, Obi Toppin over 4.5 is just seems like an absolute no-brainer to me. There are some other ones, but I think for me, like, with all these things, like, you shouldn't bet on like too many bets, because ultimately, if you bet on like 3, 4, 5, you're ultimately just going to get to a point where even if you win some, you're just not going to win them all. You're going to lose some money. So I try and limit it to like just a couple, but those are kind of a couple of my best bets that I'd suggest.
Yeah, going off that Obi Toppin one, Paddy Power, and I think Sky Bet did it last year. They do specific ones, so who's going to get picked at what spot. So Paddy Power have odds for who's going to get picked at 4 based on the fact that top 3 are quite consensus. In your head, who do you see as the better fits for the Bulls? Because I like Denny, who's the favourite. He's 15-8, which is quite good odds. And they've got Obi Toppin at 11-4, and then Killian Hayes at 7-1 as well. Who do you think is a good fit for them at 4? Because there could be some money to make on that bet.
Yeah, I think I'd say Denny and Killian are the two guys who I'd suggest the Bulls were looking at there. Those would be the two guys. So I think Killian sitting there at 7-1 looks good value to me. Halliburton, maybe more of an outsider, but I don't love the odds at 9-1. But yeah, for me, Denny, Killian were the two guys the Bulls will be picking between.
I'm quite high on Devin Vassell as well. I spoke about on the last podcast, and his over under is 11.5. And I like the under for him. I don't know why. I just think he's a really good prospect, and there's not many wings that can shoot in this year's like top 15, 16 prospects. So for me, under 11.5 at 8-11 isn't bad odds. That's obviously the favourite because it evens to be over 11.5. So what are your thoughts on Devin Vassell at under 11.5?
Yeah, I'm not a huge Devin Vassell guy. That's probably an understatement. I'm really not a fan. I think I've got him at 19 right now. I just don't really see it. I think he's I think he's a really good defender, especially off the ball. Maybe one of the best in the draft. I think he's a good 3-point shooter. I mean, we saw the video of him hurling medicine balls at the rim a few weeks ago, which was worrying. And obviously they've now put out that he was just goofing around. But like, I don't know if I buy that. Like, there's some worry there because I do see an element of the way he shot in college. There was an element of that kind of like wind up behind the head already. I just don't see the offensive upside scoring the ball outside of him being anything much more than a pull-up jump shoot base or a 3-point shooter. So yeah, I'm not so high on Vassell or Vassell. Americans always call it Vassell. I don't actually know which way it's right. I call it Vassell. But yeah, for me, I think kind of he seemed like a really hot name back in like April, May, June. Seemed to have quietened off a little bit now. So that's one that for me, I just stay away from personally because I don't feel like I've got a really strong suggestion on it. The other one that might be worth is James Wiseman, under 2.5. Like, what's the likelihood we think Wiseman will drop to 3 with the Hornets? Most people think he'll go 2 to the Warriors. So, but again, not something I'm going to put any money on myself. But those are the two kind of key ones that I suggested earlier.
What's the odds for Wiseman to be under 2.5?
5-4.
Okay, cool. Because there's a one that I like. The last one on my list I want to talk about was they've got a first to be drafted section, which is like player versus player. LaMelo Ball versus James Wiseman. You can get Wiseman at 7-4 to be picked first. And for me, if Edwards is a lock at number 1, which a lot of people think he is, I agree with you that if the Warriors don't trade out, they'll pick him. So you're basically on 7-4 banking on the Warriors not trading out and picking him at 2. Whereas LaMelo Ball is 2-5 to be picked at number 2 spot. So I think those odds are a little bit the wrong way around. So a 7-4 for Wiseman for me to be picked before LaMelo Ball would be what I'd go for. Yeah,
and if we get some news like before the draft that like the Warriors have exhausted all offers, they're not trading the second pick, then I would jump on that. At the minute, like we discussed earlier, I'd just be too worried at the minute that you do that. They then trade it to the Knicks, and the Knicks pick LaMelo, and you're like, I wouldn't have done that if I'd known they were going to trade it. So again, like some of these, I'd say is just like keep up to date with some of like the bit of draft Twitter and news that you get coming out, because I find a lot of the time with these bookies and odds, especially like some niche like the NBA draft, they don't update it that quickly. They're not as hot. Yeah. They normally follow the money rather than the news because they don't know what's real smoke and what's fake smoke. So yeah, that's something I'd say. Just keep monitoring it over the next week, and you'll be able to find some value there for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think the day before, if there's been no news, you can have a look at it, and if there's talk saying, "Oh, the Knicks and Warriors are engaging in trade talks," then you just step away and you think, "Right, I'm not going to back that at all." Whereas if, like you said, if we hear rumours from one of the beat writers out of Golden State that they're not going to trade or they haven't got a good offer, then you can say, right, 7-4, and just hope that you can beat the guys at Paddy Power for changing the odds. But yeah, cool. Some good draft bets there. I hope you win lots of money, mate.
As do I.
Cool. Well, thank you very much again for coming on. We'll have to get you on post draft maybe for some grading and kind of talk about the best and worst picks, if that'd be something you'd be up for. Yeah, sounds good. I'm happy to help. Let's talk and draft. Cool. All right. Well, thanks again, James. In terms of everyone else, me and Ben are going to be back next week for a post draft podcast and another free agency special. So we will speak to you again soon. Cheers, James.